Hello, good evening to all of you, and I welcome you on behalf of Go to University and Brighter Education Group. Thank you for joining us for this webinar session today on roadmap to US universities. We all know that it is important to prepare for such applications, and what we need is guidance in terms of what needs to be done. So today I'm going to guide all of you in terms of understanding what a student profile and how it should look like, and what are the criterias, what are the things that we should be considering while applying, and also keeping in mind the important aspects of your application which revolve around the deadlines, the process, and what are the applications that are to be completed. Now I know most of you are aware of a lot of things that need to be taken care, but still I will make sure that I cover each and every point related to it. All right. Also, a little insight into how you can build your profile, which can be applicable and which will be viable to apply to colleges that come under the Ivy League. Also, on that note, I would like to start. My name is Advait Aras. Also, a small request. I know you might have a lot of questions going into the webinar, and I would suggest that you can keep your questions for a little later so that once I'm done with the presentation, I'll try to answer each and every question that you have related to it. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. A small introduction about us. So we are into this for almost 11 and a half years now. And each year we try to send a lot of students to their dream location, their dream universities, and trying to see through it the process of understanding what is required in terms of applications, right? We help them prepare for the essays. We help them understand what is required out of them for the essays, because for the US application, as we know, essay is one of the very important aspect. And if you can craft an eloquent essay, then that's one way of saying that, hey, one part is actually covered. So it's in the process, and we help prepare the students for that, as well as in terms of application support, and we try to help them with mentoring throughout the whole journey they are with us. So students are with us for a year, students with us for 2 years. Um, and that is exactly what and how we deal with. Yes, Amitabh, I'll come to questions a little later, right? I said that in the beginning. I'll just say that. Let me just finish the presentation, then I'll come back to each and every question. All right. Now, let us start with listing down and looking at the universities in the US, right from Yale, Cornell, Columbia, UPenn, Duke, Brown. These are all the names that come to your mind, a few of them being from the Ivy League. And we hear them in conversation. We hear them when we read about students who have graduated. We see how people have managed to be a part of these universities. But what have they done to get into this college or get into this particular institute, right? So they also must have gone through a certain set of process, a certain set of understanding, a certain set of criteria that they build, right? So the first step towards building your application is to understand from what aspect we come to these colleges. So the first question that we need to probably answer is how, right? By choosing the right college. So should I apply to University of Pennsylvania? Should I also apply to Duke University? Should I keep both the options open? Or should I only focus on a certain set of universities which are good for me? How do I categorize them, right? So understanding the categories is very, very important. Starting right from rankings. Yes, you go through the Shanghai rankings, you go through the US World News rankings, you go through several other portals where you find the QS rankings. Many rankings are available for your reference, for your understanding, and I feel that is one of the ways in which students usually identify where they want to head. Now that is one of the ways or one of the directions that they can head into. They can look at the distance, They also need to think about the location, because sometimes we do not know while we are thinking about it, but we do have certain set of, um, get into that particular set of college, and the location is kind of an important preference. So that is something that needs to be identified with the help of a guide, of a person who can guide you towards finding that particular college. Also, a certain set of program is good in one university while it's not that great in another university. So program, what program you're planning to continue, what program you plan on completing, becomes another important aspect. See, we need to dig deeper when we are making that decision of going to the top universities. Right from bachelor's to master's, we need to find the right essence in terms of the programs, and programs relate to the faculty who's teaching in the university, right? Sometimes, especially for master's degree, when we look into, students have this knack of going into a research. They have been working on a project at an undergraduate level, and they want to carry that through to their masters. So it's important that in a university where you find a professor who's working on a similar set of a research, to join that institute, because that's more convenient and also something which is going to be very helpful in the process, right? Something which will benefit the entire team, right? Then we come to another important aspect, which is diversity, because that is something which also has to be taken into account, also has to be understood, where the students are coming to that part of the world for studying, which particular part of the world, and how that is going to prepare and embrace you in terms of your personality development as well. Then the cost, obviously, that's another important factor in deciding whether or not we are right in the middle of it, and help them identify, understand, and eventually work towards getting that thing sorted out, right? And then obviously reputation for each of those colleges, in terms of what kind of reputation they post. Sometimes the rank might be uh, not a defining factor, but the reputation might be, and those two are a little different, and that is what we need to understand, right? Reputation is something which helps you understand the students that overall have graduated, and what kind of a reputation that college has gained from the students that have already passed out from it, right? And that is a little different as compared to the ranking, because the criteria, the parameters that they set up for ranking are a little different than these. So that is something that we need to understand right away. All right. So once you have figured the how, then we move on to build and understand your profile, because that is something which is very, very important, right? And then we talk about what. Now, this, according to me, is one of the most important slides of the whole presentation, because this covers most of the aspects that will be required to apply to the universities at the bachelor's level, at least. For masters, you usually apply through the portal, but even though you apply to these US colleges, your holistic review is done. And when you say holistic review, the difference that I always tell students is that when you apply to the US, the one thing that is for sure is that they don't just say that you get, equivalent number of GPA or grades equivalent to this and you're in. See, that's where we are mistaken. What US says is you get this degree, or this particular GPA, this particular grade scale, and you're considered. So you get considered with other applicants that are applying to the college, right? That means you're in the pool if you maintain the grade. So academics, yes, one of the important criteria. IELTS, TOEFL, whichever exam you want to pick, that is for your basically language proficiency. So once you are clear with these two things, the next thing that relates to is basically extracurricular activities. Now we are done with understanding your academics, your IELTS. So you're proficient in the language, you're good with your academics. What extracurricular activities do you have? What extracurricular activities are you a part of? What do you practice? Then we talk about books to read. Now, this may sound a little odd at times. Like, what are books to read in terms of my application? If you actually go and check, there is a question about the books that you have read in the past 1 or 2 years is part of the supplemental essays for Columbia University. It's funny how we think that books to read may just be something which is, a non reclusive thing related to the application process. But no, there are universities which want to know about your other interests as well. Now, the next question I know will be whether they should be related to the major that you plan on taking, or they should not be related to the major that you plan on taking. So that is something where you can draw a fine line, basically starting by developing an interest in reading and then probably reading a couple of books related to your major interest as well, because that is going to add a lot of value. Then leadership activities in terms of your school, in terms of your college, where and what and how have you participated differently? How have you taken interest in a lot of activities? Whether you go to the school only to participate in your academics and that's it. Other than that, are you a part of the student government, the head boy, head girl, house captain, anything that is related to this particular feature, they would want to know, right? Then comes the online courses. Now, online courses are available on Coursera, on Academy, EDX. There are portals which give you fantastic courses related to the major that you plan on studying. Now, you can do that at a beginner level, you can do that at an intermediary level, or maybe at a professional level as well, but that depends on you. And also the kind of course that you take. So we have to sit together, identify which course will be utilized, which course will be beneficial and helpful from that particular point of view, so that we make sure that that course is going to help me build my profile a bit more. You see, the more you work on these activities individually, the more you're building your profile in a way that it looks solid, right? Each of these activities, each of these parameters are individually, uniquely identifying and classifying you into something that is needed for the applications to the top colleges in the US, right? Then we talk about internships. Now, I know for a matter of fact, I've heard this a lot of times, students have problems getting internships. But even in COVID, there were some institutes which were providing online internships, some were allowing students to get, probably acquainted with the kind of professional environment they will get into after they finish their degree. And I think that's something that you need to go through. That is something which is very, very important and very, very essential. Then we talk about community service. Now, when we talk about the Western world is also influenced by the idea of you growing up in a particular community. And what have you done to build on that community? What have you done to add value to that community? What have you done to make sure that the way the community has helped you grow, you are helping them too? So that is one of the other aspects of applying, where they need to know what kind of community service you're doing. So whether you run for a marathon, which is for diabetes patient, for cancer patients, or whether you participate in a beach cleanup activity, or individually where you distribute meals to people, you do that on your own individually, and they are classified as your own community service activities, which on a basis you select them. So you know what you're doing and you understand the importance of these activities. Apart from this, there are several other things that you can take up. One thing that comes at the top of my head is basically your research. A lot of times students write research article, research paper, and they submit it to a journal, they submit it to an institute, and that is how they qualify themselves to be at a certain pedestal. And that to me is one of the aspects which is so essentially important, because at times your research helps them understand your interest in the subject. Now, this is nobody telling you to go ahead and do it, but this is something that you can do. All the activities that I am mentioning right now are not necessarily be able to complete over a period of time, because hey, you have school, you have college, you have a lot of things to complete. And in that, I'm giving you 10 other activities. And that is why I keep repeating myself. To build a profile, you need to find way and time to do activities which you like, because when you like certain activities, you will do it with your whole heart. That will create a lot of interest. It will help you in understanding what is exactly required for your application. And that, to me, is something which determines everything. Then you can also try by participating in the summer schools, which the universities like University of Pennsylvania, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, even for that matter, Oxford and Cambridge hosts in summers. You can try competing and try participating in them if you feel that is also something which is very important, right? So through these activities are what question gets particularly covered up. Now, common app, essay, activity list, letters of recommendation, and supplemental essays, I'll come to them a little later, right? Now, for all kinds of students, your academic background plays a very important role. So the kind of predicted grades. So for undergraduate, they will look at your grades from grade 9th to 12th. So 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th predicted, right? So MYP and IBDP, IGCSE or GCSE, and A levels. So all of these grades, along with the final year predicted grades, is what will be taken into consideration. So all these years become really, really important. For American curriculum, they will look into 9th, 10th, 11th grades, predictions of senior year, and AP, that is advanced placements exam, if you all have taken any. An advanced placement exam becomes very important, essentially reflective of how you see things and you build up, and that helps you understanding all of it in the right possible way. Okay, next we move on to the tests or the standardized tests that you can take. So SAT, which is the Scholastic Aptitude Test, which happens every year, March, May, August, October, December. So 5 times a year, you can pre-book and get that done. If you are not able to get an SAT date, you can book an ACT date, that is ACT. And that could also be one of the tests that you can take up. For building your profile and showing to colleges that you are qualified enough, you can also take the advanced placement test. The advanced placement tests are basically pre-college degree credits that you will get alongside your high school degree. And that is something which will be very reflective of your understanding in terms of how well you are prepared for that degree. And a lot of students do that, especially for the Ivy League college, and very important factor. Obviously, IELTS or TOEFL, one of those exams, not both. They are language proficiency tests, reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Those are the criterias, important factors. And I think y'all should not take a lot of time in preparing yourselves for it, because trust me, you guys are learning English for, I don't know, the entirety of your life. So probably this is the easiest to crack. The only thing that is decisive when it comes to these tests is the kind of grading that they have. And sometimes you need to practice a little to get into the flow and sit for the exam. That's all. Practice makes you ready to take up the challenge and complete the exam. Moving on to how to prepare for the college, right? So there are certain things that you will need along with your preparation, right? So what are these things that will effectively decide how many essays you're going to write? US colleges, apart from a holistic review of your candidature, will also be looking into a lot of different set of essays that you write. Essays define how good you are, how potent you are, and what all ideas you have developed over a period of time. So right from Common App essay to your individual college supplemental essays, to University of California essays, University of Texas essays, or personal statements, or individual college applications. All of this has to be concise, has to be understood, and has to be written in a way they want us to write. For instance, the Common App essay, just for one example, I'll try to provide. They give you different questions which are very general. So share an incident from your life which has challenged you in a way that you remember, or talk about a background or an identity, or they let you talk about a particular incident that has completely changed your perception towards things. So these are the kind of topics which they want to understand, because in the common application that you send to the universities, they get your personal profile, they get your academic profile, they get your activity list, by which they have understood everything related to you in terms of the the professional aspects. And as we say, there are two sides of a coin. This exactly resonates the other side. The way you write your essay, the way you connect with them on an individual basis, the way you tell them who you are, who you identify yourself to be. I mean, I've seen students write essays getting into Harvard and Stanford about how they found their love for cooking, right? Or how they understood that it's important for them to help their parents in terms of their businesses, or how a student who was so addicted with games realizes that there is in-house purchase, an in-house purchase related to create a curiosity as to what is in-house purchase or in-game purchase and what can happen, and that created or triggered his interest towards finance. So these are the kind of incidences, these are the kind of moments, these are the kind of situations that we all go through on a daily basis, but it's just there at the back of the head. These are the unique ideas that could define your future, your application being valid or potent enough for them to accept. So the valid, if it is valid or not, it depends on how well, how good you craft your essays. So at Brighter Education Group, what we try to do is we try to get idea from students. We try to understand what they want to write, and then we effectively get it eloquent enough so that they are presentable and up to the standards and marks of how, up to the standard and the mark as the university wants them to be. Because there is a particular way in which you identify, you write, you present, and that is why it's important to know what is essentially required. All right. Next is the recommendation letters. As I stated in the earlier slide that I'll speak on it later, you need to choose the teacher, the professor who is going to recommend you. And it should be the person who knows you, who has liked you, and who has time for you. Because all this while, it has been pretty much important to understand the need to have that professor recommend you, because they know you well, they understand, they care for you, and that is how they will write a recommendation which will be compelling enough for the admissions committee to get the message that, hey, this candidate is good enough, right? So they should highlight your personal achievements, they should highlight your academic prowess, they should highlight what unique qualities you bring to the table as an individual. I mean, it shouldn't be restricted only to academics or your achievements, right? I mean, something unique discovery, like in one of the classes when the teacher was presenting on a topic and no one was able to get a solution, you got the solution by diversifying into a completely different channel, and you were able to get that solution which was really or highly appreciated by the teacher. Now this is one of the incidences you could share in your personal recommendation letter that could reflect highly, because on two things. One is because the teacher has written it as an example, as an anecdote, and two, it shows that even in unusual circumstances you're able to come out with solutions, and solutions are very important. They are imperative in bold, right? And obviously, if they give it a personal touch, that will definitely help you in terms of your consideration for admission. Now, as we know, in the US, there is something called as early action, there is something called as early decision, there is something called as regular decision. We'll come to the timelines a little later, but the basic criteria is that early action means applying to the colleges early and letting them know about your interest. Early decision is basically when you are pretty sure, when you are sure of that university, that this is the university that I want to get into, and you want to go ahead and apply to that university, you can apply to that with an early decision. Now, in early decision, it is a binding contract between you and the university, obviously with the affiliation of your parents. So you all agree that if you get into this early decision college, you will quit all the other applications and only focus on this college, which according to me is very, very important. For example, on an average, okay, this is estimated that the acceptance rate of Cornell Columbia for international students is somewhere around 7 to 8% or 10 to 12%, right? So on general, and that is something which they look into, right? So if that is something which they are looking into, with early decision and a binding contract, you are making the university say that, hey, I am very much interested. So no matter wherever else I apply, if you select me, I'm coming to you, and you sign a binding contract. Your acceptance rate jumps from 12 to 20 to 22%. So a direct jump in 8 to 10%, which means that the university will now consider you more, right? And that's an advantage with early decision as compared to early action, which is not binding. Regular decision basically is something where students apply, and you should always have option for early action and regular decision. Now, whether you do an early decision or whether you do something called as restricted early action, if you may have heard of, it's for Stanford as well, right? So in restricted early action, it's, even though it's not binding, but it's more like early decision where you give your affirmation to that university that, hey, I am applying to you. So in that period, you are not able to apply to other early action colleges which are private. So you try to keep it a little shush and focus more on the regular decision colleges. Even Yale University has the restricted early action. So here, when you meet our counselors, we sit with you, we understand what are your requirements, what are your criterias, and try to help you at each and every juncture and make sure that things fall into place and you are able to understand what's happening. This is the timeline. So the next intake, that is next year, August, you will have to apply for early decision, early action by 1st of November. The other applications, that is regular decision applications, will happen around from 30th November to Jan 1st. Now, there is also UC applications, colleges like UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, UC Davis, UC Irvine. So they have a separate application and their deadline is 30th November. UC colleges do not have something called as an early action, early decision. They only have one regular decision and the deadline is 30th November. You will expect the admission results for early action and early decision by December and for regular decision by March. And basically to confirm your admission and pay a deposit and reserve your seat, May 1st is usually the deadline. And that is how the process works. Then for Ivy League colleges like Columbia, Stanford, Harvard, they have certain alumni interviews in your city. Now they give you an option of it not being mandatory, right? So they give you an option of understanding what exactly you can do when it comes to alumni interviews. You meet them, you talk to them, and that helps them understand. So we help you prepare for these interviews. Sometimes there are online interviews, sometimes there are admissions committee interviews where the admissions team, looking at your profile, have found you quite important to their application process, but they still want to know more about you. At that particular point of time, they discuss with you sitting, at an online interview panel, and they would ask questions related to your application, especially related to your academic subjects, your choices. What did you write in your common app or coalition essay? How have you developed yourself over the years? How did you handle yourself in a particular situation? Or how have you grown in the last 4 years as compared to what you were 4 years ago? So these are the sort of questions that they generally ask, and they expect you to answer in a very specific way to make sure that they pertain to that particular aspect, right? So something of that sort will really help and benefit you overall. How do we help? We help in assigning a counselor. Like I said, our counselor stays with you throughout. They help you in understanding, identifying. They have regular meetups. They have uh, understanding of what your profile should be, what activities you should do, how you should build your profile right from grade 10th till grade 12th, till you actually end up finishing your application, right? Then where you should go ahead and complete your internship, where should you be volunteering, do you need classes for SAT, or if you can do it on their own? Do you need classes for IELTS, or can you manage it on your own? Then the most important aspect of shortlisting the universities, finalizing on them, writing and drafting the supplemental essays, making sure each and every essay is catering to the requirement and the question that has been asked, recommendation letter, guidance on submitting the application, waiting for decisions, finalizing on the decisions, helping you with the visas, helping you complete the formalities like accommodation, and making sure that we let you know of post guidance support, post landing support of students who are already studying in the universities that you will travel, or helping you finalize on certain students who are traveling from here so that you don't travel alone. So all of these things are included as part of our preparation, right? Thank you very much for patiently listening to me and patiently helping you understand. If you are interested and want to know more, please contact the below people, Miss Sarah for UAE region and Mr. Varun for India region, and get in touch with them. We have free individual counseling sessions where questions which have been asked, I need to apply to Cornell University College Engineering Diploma. So these are the questions which we can, probably answer individually, right? Rather than answering as part of a webinar, please get in touch with these people and they will help you understanding and identifying what is the right way to go ahead. If you intend to have something, please message Sarah for UAE region, please message Varun for India region, and they will help you identifying, having individual sessions and guiding you throughout. Now I throw the mic open to all of you. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I can probably go through and try to answer as much as possible. Anybody has any questions, any queries? Okay, we have one question in the chat. What is internship shadowing? Will you help in getting internship? Pragya, yes, we do have resources. We do have sources in which we can guide you where you can apply for an internship. So there is a difference between internship and shadowing. Those are two different things. So shadowing is basically for pre-medicine students, biology, biological sciences, who are intending to study medicine in the US. So for them, there is a shadowing, but for most of the other courses, they go for an internship. Right? I have two more questions. Scholarships. Scholarship is basically dependent and categorized into two categories. One is merit-based scholarships, which when you submit the application, you are considered for. Two, there is financial aid, for which you need to fill in the financial aid data, which is the CSS profile on the college board, which we will guide you when the time comes. So first you have to prepare and, explain everything to them and fill in the application on the college board website and submit your requirement for a financial need, financial aid. But merit-based scholarships, depending upon your academic profile, will be eligible as soon as you apply to the colleges. The earlier you start, the better. It depends on where you want to start. I believe for a master's degree, you should start in the second year. And for high school, you should start when you begin your grade 11th. So I think that's something that we can refer to. Sujoy, our cost is depending and is quite flexible. So I would keep it open. If you individually meet us, we can tell you the cost of our services. So first, we like to meet the student. We like to understand the requirement. And on the basis of the requirement, we can curtail a kind of cost that will be part of our service charge so that we can cater each individual, in the right way possible. Scholarships, students are eligible on the basis of merit. So that is completely fine. GRE, if you want to get into the top colleges, I would still say it's better to give GRE rather than keeping it test optional. And test optional was mostly for COVID. And now that it is slightly dying out, people are more back to the basics and trying to give a GRE. Only California as a state as of now has completely restricted the GRE and SAT for a certain period of time. But I think most of the universities, if you apply, especially the top notch ones, you should definitely go with the GRE. Right? For a bachelor's degree at Harvard, I think it would cost around $80,000 or so, at least. But if you get financial aid, which could be in the amounts of 40 to 50,000 at least, so you could save up on a lot of money. So see, that's the balance that you need to make. You need to look into the aspect. When you apply for a financial aid, there are different ways in which you can identify what exactly the financial aid requirement is and how do you see it overall, right? For medicine, basically there is no direct entry into medicine. So you will have to do a bachelor's degree and then apply through your bachelor's degree with MCAT exam and apply to a medical school. So in US, you start with a bachelor's degree, which is usually referred to as a pre-medicine degree. Early decision is better when you apply to Ivy League colleges or the top colleges and give them the satisfaction that, hey, I'm getting into a binding contract because I want to come to that university. Early action is early applying and indicating that, yes, you want to get into the university, but there is no binding contract. So you can apply to 10 early action colleges and get in all 10 and decide at the end which one you want to go ahead with. Early decision, you can only apply to one college. You can't apply to more than one. And if you get that decision, you go to that college, no matter whatever other college options you have applied to. So that's the major difference between early decision and early action. Our placement success rate is quite high, Mr. Venkat. We have received students who have gotten into different colleges. And like I said, their dream universities. It all boils down to, getting into the whole process. Yes, Sujoy, we do help in Masters in Chemical Engineering in the US. You can contact on the email ID if you're from India or UAE, our counselor. If you drop an email, they will get in touch with you and we will have a session to understand the requirement, to understand where you come from, what is needed for your application process, and we will guide you thoroughly throughout the process. No, you cannot do early decision for 2 universities at a time. I guess that's about it. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely having a meeting with you. I hope I was helpful enough in guiding you, towards a degree where you might be able to get the best out of it. I hope after this presentation, you take your decisions and move along your career. All the very best to all of you. And I wish success to each one of us. Thank you so much. You've been a lovely audience. Take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye.